everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Pleasure Principles, the podcast where we dive into the art and science of pleasure, intimacy, and living a turned on life from the inside out. I'm your host, Avik, and today we are unpacking something that often hides behind closed doors, yet touches every corner of our lives, which is the sexual health and the wellness. So, whether you are curious, concerned, or maybe craving better connection, then today's episode will open up your understanding on the sexual wellness like never before. So, joining us is the powerhouse in the field, Dr. Brian L. Steixner. So, welcome to the show, Brian.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Amazing, amazing. So, dear listeners, before we delve deep into this discussion, I'll quickly love to introduce you with Dr. Brian. So, Dr. Brian is not just a board certified physician in urology and sexual medicine. He is the co founder and CEO of Popstar Labs, a cutting edge company changing the game in men's sexual health and the sexual wellness. So, from premature ejaculations and erectile dysfunction to confidence in the boardroom and beyond, uh, Dr. Brian is here to help us break the stigma and build real understanding. So, dear listeners, get ready to challenge some taboos, learn some science, and learn into better pleasure because this one's about feeling good, being well, and showing up fully in the intimate life. So, let's dive in. Welcome to the show again.
Thank you so much. It's really a pleasure to be here to speak with you.
Amazing, amazing. So, Dr. Brian, I mean, you have seen it all when it comes to men's sexual health. So, uh, what do you think? I mean, what do most men misunderstand about their own sexual wellness?
There's a lot of misinformation in the world of sexual medicine and sexual health. And from the time we're young, it's a neglected part of our education. It's a neglected part of our overall health and wellness. And so a lot of guys just don't know what is normal. And when something goes wrong or they're not satisfied or their partner isn't satisfied, not only do they not have a basis of education, a lot of times they don't know where to turn and they don't know where to get help. And so, that's the root of what I do is to help men understand what's normal, how it breaks, and then what solutions are out there to help you so you can have a more meaningful and more confident sex life.
Hmm. Exactly. I totally agree with you. I mean, since childhood only, these discussions we been made aside, and we had some different perspective also that time. So yeah, and why do you think that this misconception persists even in such information age right now?
You know, the one thing that two big items that I think always come into play. And the first is there is an embarrassment and a hesitancy to seek out information that is legitimate, right? So if a man is suffering from premature ejaculation, from a low libido, from erectile dysfunction, they're often
Yeah.
hesitant to speak to their family, their friends, their partners, or even their doctor about these issues. So, at baseline, there's not a lot of conversation happening here where
Yeah.
if it was something with your heart or something you were
Mm,
having difficulty with your lungs, you would have a more open conversation. The
mm,
second thing that I think has absolutely been critical in stunting men's education is the overuse of pornography and the expectations that pornography may put on men to to believe that they have to have giant penises or last for hours in bed or some perception of norm that perhaps isn't really accurate.
So do you think it is actually is affecting the concept or understanding behind the actual scenarios?
I do. I do. I see a lot of men in my office. We see a lot of men in our practice and a lot of men coming to our business who have these ideas that take something like premature ejaculation, right? Of the most common sexual complaint that men have, right? It's more prevalent than erectile dysfunction. It's more prevalent than low libido. And men believe that they have to have sex for a half hour because that's what they see or that's what they read about, or perhaps that's what their friends are telling them that they do. But the average amount of time that men have sex is around 5 minutes in the world.
True.
And so if you were to watch pornography or you were to talk to friends or families or get into group chats, guys a lot of time make things up. And so this perception that premature ejaculation or lasting for 5 minutes isn't enough, it isn't true.
True. Exactly. Exactly. I mean, that gap between information and the real world awareness, I mean, it's really like we are uh, technically educated, but still emotionally or culturally in the dark right now. Read. And so you have worked extensively with ED and premature ejaculations. So, how do you see the psychological side of these issues, like interacting with the physical symptoms?
Yeah. When I speak to men about sexual health issues, we always talk about both the mental side of it, the physical side of it, and how they interplay together, right? So if
Mm.
we take something like premature ejaculation, we know that there's a genetic predisposition to this. And it relates to some central nervous system and serotonin issues. And so some men just don't have that down regulation and their ejaculatory time will be short. The problem is that
Mm.
even if there is a genetic predisposition in the space of premature ejaculation, it is those early experiences with stress and anxiety and not being able to last that sometimes snowball, making the issue worse and worse. And so anytime I see someone in the office or we're talking about developing some new products for Popstar Labs, we're always thinking about what is the real physiology here, meaning how does everything supposed to work perfectly? And what is the pathophysiology? So how do things break? And when you talk pathophysiology, you always have to talk both the mental and the physical and how they work together.
Exactly. Yeah. So, like, do you think that men usually come to you after emotional damage has already taken root in their confidence? I would say not in relationship only, but I'd say confidence.
Yes. I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head. I mean, when it comes to sexual health or sexual wellness,
Mm.
one of the major goals is to make men confident, right?
Yeah.
Because anytime you have a sexual health issue, whether or not that's premature ejaculation or erectile dysfunction, um, really it's about gaining your confidence back in the bed. And so we start
Mm.
seeing patients in the office, usually when they're pretty advanced or pretty far along, because it takes a lot for men to sort of get up the courage to see their doctor. Um,
Yeah.
and one of the important things that's a part of my practice and part of
Mm.
our company is we lead with education and we work very closely with sex therapists because a
Mhm.
lot of times a small issue like difficulty with erections in your 20s can turn into a major issue if it's allowed to sort of spiral and the man is not given the tools to succeed.
Exactly. Exactly. So, I mean, it's really powerful to recognize like how much our self worth is uh, tied to the performance, especially for men conditioned to prove themselves sexually. So, yeah, definitely. And also would love to talk about the biggest red flags that someone's sexual wellness may be hormonally uh, driven rather than purely psychological or lifestyle based. So, what is it?
You know, when we talk about things like low libido, we talk about how it presents. and how a man may first begin to notice that their hormones are impacting their quality of life. And so, anytime you have sexual side effects, meaning you have decreased libido, you have difficulty with erections, you're not interested in sexual activity, you have to worry, is this a hormonal issue or a hormonal imbalance? Now, that said, there's a lot of other things that can make you have decreased libido. Most of us have very stressful lives. We worry about our family, our work, money, our physical health. And so it's not always just hormones at play, um, but it's something to consider. The other thing I tell men is that hormones are not just about sexual function. And so low testosterone can present with a buildup of fat, a decrease in muscle, sometimes being tired, having mental inclarity,
Mm,
diabetes, and other hormone things. So, whenever a man begins to feel like maybe I'm not getting strong erections, or I'm not sexually interested anymore, or they're having other global symptoms, I think it's
mm.
important to sit down with your physician and have a real long conversation about what the causes could be and do an initial workup.
Hmm. That's a good part of it, yeah. And also like this TRT. So dear listeners, TRT is testosterone replacement therapy. So uh, what do you think? I mean, is there still a stigma around this? Like, how do you address that? I mean, what do you say?
Yeah, there has been a lot of misinformation in the field of testosterone replacement therapy dating back 20 or 30 years. Um, the way I always look at this is there's several hormone systems in our body, right? You can think about the insulin in the pancreas, the adrenal gland, the thyroid gland, the pituitary gland. In all those situations, if one of those hormones is out of balance, we as physicians work to get it back into balance. If you know anyone who has a thyroid issue, we don't just let those patients live with low thyroid levels. We replace them and bring them to normal. And for the longest time, we neglected to do that with testosterone because we thought it was just a normal part of aging. We know testosterone peaks in a man in around age 30 and then will slowly go down every year that he is alive. And so we don't often notice the decline that happens because it's happening so slowly. And so a man reaches age 40, 45, 50, even 35. And
Yeah.
because this process has been slow, because we don't really always talk about these issues, men suffer and don't look for treatment. And then a lot of times when they get to the doctor, they're told
Mm,
this is a normal part of aging.
yeah.
That's beginning to change. And I think mainstream conversations are beginning to recognize that getting a man's testosterone into the normal range, into the high normal range, can not only impact their quality of life, their
Mm,
sex life, but can impact their health span, their lifespan, and make them a generally healthier human being.
yeah. Exactly. So and also like um it might sound uncomfortable to a lot of people, but still, I believe like the discussion must go on because that is the only way we can uh, change the mindset. So, what do you think? Like, how often is shame or silence the true root of these sexual health issues in your experience?
Well, I don't think shame or
Mhm.
silence causes these issues.
Okay.
But I think shame and silence can make them dramatically worse. And so, take something like erectile dysfunction. I tell men in my practice that your risk of having difficulty with erections equals your age. So, a man who's 25 years old, who may feel like he is young and healthy, he still can have difficulty 25% of the time. And
Mhm.
these men who may be having their first sexual experiences and having difficulty with erections are embarrassed, they feel shame, and they don't know where to turn. So they perseverate on it, they fixate on it, and it gets worse and worse and worse. And then they they shy away from sexual activity. It becomes difficulties in their relationships. It begins to impact their confidence and how they perform at work and in relationships. And so it can be a very dark spiral. And so one of the things that has been incredibly important since we launched Popstar Labs is to really lead with education so that men have an avenue to understand really these things are, other men are suffering from them. There is a lot of information to be learned and to understand an individual treatment plan, and then what options are out there to help you,
Mm.
no matter where you are or what you're suffering with.
Yeah. So, I mean, so what would it look like if we raised boys to talk openly about sex? Would your work look completely different?
Yes, without question. I'm still shocked at how men come in to see me, and they'll see me in the office, and they won't even put their complaint on their form. And we'll talk about something else for quite some time, and then at the very end, they'll say, "Let me just ask you about one other thing." I think that as this world begins to focus on not just lifespan, right? Not just living to be 70 or 80 years old, which was always what we talked about. Now we're talking about health span. So living to be 70 years old and enjoying the things that you enjoy. The conversation that's coming in 10 years is sexual health span, how men can live into their 60s, 70s, 80s, and beyond, remain healthy and remain sexually active, which is an important part of connection. And so I think if we can begin to have these conversations, I think we're going to have a happier population. I think we're going to have a healthier population. And I think we're going to have stronger, more meaningful relationships for couples.
Mm. True, I agree. So, like, um, what do you see as the future of men's sexual wellness in the next decade?
So I think education first, right? I think there's 5 big issues that are affecting us right now. I think premature ejaculation,
Mm.
erectile dysfunction, testosterone replacement therapy, Peyronie's disease is very common. It's having curvature of the penis, which can cause some difficulties. But male factor infertility and semen and sperm health, I think, are quietly becoming a major issue. And so when I look at the landscape of sexual wellness over the next 25 to 30 years, unfortunately, I think our society is becoming sicker. I think we have rising rates of hypertension, rising rates of cholesterol issues, increasing rates of diabetes and cancer. And my concern is these issues are going to be only made worse as we get more unhealthy. But the biggest thing that scares me is semen and sperm health. We know that there's been about a 50% decline in semen volume and sperm health since the 70s. And I think we talk about global warming or all these issues that impact the planet. But I think one of the things that we're not talking enough about is the real risks of
Mm.
population decline and infertility and how that it can impact our species. And so when I look forward, I think we're getting sicker, which I think is going to mean increasing rates of testosterone deficiency, erectile dysfunction. But I think the big issue in our future is how men are going to maintain healthy sperm as we look forward over the next 10 to 20 years.
True, I agree, totally agree. Great. Thank you so much, Dr. Brian, for showing us that sexual wellness is not just about the biology, it's about the belief, conversation, and confidence. So, um, if there's one takeaway today, it's this, dear listeners, that your pleasure is worth prioritizing and your wellness is worth the work. And silence is never the solution. So, whether you're exploring these topics for yourself, your partner, or your community, take what you have heard today and start a new kind of conversation. So, Dr. Brian, like if someone wants to connect with you, what will be the best medium to connect?
Yeah, my website is popstarlabs.com. and on all social media platforms, you can find us at Popstar Labs. And those are platforms of education. There's massive amounts of information and solutions on those platforms for you to be able to get some of your questions answered and some of your problems fixed.
Perfect. Perfect. Lovely. Great. So, dear listeners, what I'll do, I'll put all the links into the show notes for your easy reference. And if you have found value in this episode, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And do not forget to follow us for more deep, real, and radically human conversations on pleasure principles. So, with this hope, until next time, stay curious, stay kind, and stay connected to your pleasure. So, thank you so much.